He doesn't get 50-50. He hasn't been around enough for that.
It did not come to pass overnight. Kody Brown's life did not blow up in one day. It shattered inch by inch, quietly, like fragile glass. The women who stood with him saw the cracks for years, but no one else could. Now, those cracks are canyons, and the life Kody constructed, the empire of ego, control, and faith, is crumbling from the inside out. This is the tale of a man who thought he could keep 4 lives in tow by force, and of the women who came to understand at last that they were never in his kingdom. They were his foundation. And when the foundation began to erode, so did he. The tension began long before the cameras ceased to roll. Then, Kody believed the show was his pulpit, his time to spread his brand of love, loyalty, and leadership. But between scenes, when cameras were stashed away and the lights went out, reality crept in through the cracks. His wives, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin, weren't smiling for the camera anymore. Christine was the first to break character. You could see it in her eyes, the way they ceased to light up when he entered a room. You could hear it in her voice, soft but hollow, like she'd already said her final goodbye, even if her lips hadn't moved to form the words yet. Kody felt it too, and that frightened him more than anything. He wasn't losing Christine. He was losing control. There's one moment the fans recall, a dinner scene, stiff and awkward. Christine sat silently with her hands folded, while Kody talked at length of loyalty and togetherness. His speech sounded like commands masquerading as philosophy. When she did respond, her tone was calm. "You're always saying that we're a family," she said, "but only when we're doing what you want." Kody chuckled, not that it was humorous, but because he didn't know what else to do. That moment, that still resistance, was the start of the end. In the background, Janelle kept a close eye. She had always been practical, realistic, rational. If Christine's power lay in passion, then Janelle's lay in simplicity. She could perceive the financial fissures opening up before the others, the hidden accounts, the never-kept promises. And she started to understand that Kody's leadership wasn't taking them anywhere. It was imprisoning them. But Mary faded into the distance, her voice softer with every episode. She had already lost her role in Kody's narrative, the wife who had been by his side as the first, now merely an icon of what had been. She observed him showering attention onto Robin, constructing her house, defending her crying, and bending faith into favoritism. It wasn't love anymore, it was power. The cracks were visible to the world. Fans began to see what the wives had known for years. Kody was no longer a patriarch. He was a man unraveling. He had lost his footing, the fragile fiction that he was living with a family rather than running one. And then came the day that altered everything. Christine packed up her belongings. No yelling. No dramatic declaration. Just hushed boxes, a borrowed truck, and the muffled boom of doors shutting on a part of her life she'd never revisit. When Kody realized she was truly departing, it wasn't heartbreak that engulfed him. It was embarrassment. For him, love had always been a transaction. Obedience for attention, loyalty for affection. Christine's leaving was not just emotional, it was public defiance. It sent a message to every wife, every viewer, every woman in his world. He wasn't invincible anymore. In confessionals, Kody began to unravel. He claimed to feel betrayed, disrespected, abandoned. But listen to what he said. He never said sorry, not once. Because deep down, Kody didn't view Christine's freedom as loss. He viewed it as rebellion. And rebellion, to a man constructed on control, is the ultimate sin. As Christine drove away from Flagstaff, the house that previously represented family unity now sat empty. Rooms once filled with laughter resounded with silence. Robin attempted to console him, but even her words couldn't silence the truth. Kody was falling apart, and there was no script to go with it this time. Christine's leaving wasn't just a breakup, it was a mirror. All of the promises he had made, all of the words he had manipulated, returned to confront him, and what looked back wasn't a leader. It was a man standing alone with his own reflection, seeing that perhaps the family he believed he had constructed never really was his to begin with. But as the first cracks widened into craters, another truth was beginning to take hold in secret, one that Kody couldn't yet see. Janelle had given up waiting for things to change. She was finished hoping that Kody would wake up. And the next time they sat across from one another, she wouldn't remain quiet. Because while Kody was wasted blaming Christine for leaving, Janelle was preparing to follow her. Kody Brown used to think his control was absolute. For years, he envisioned himself as the center of a plural empire. The husband, the breadwinner, the one around whom everyone else revolved. But when Christine left, the gravitational force changed. The orbit started to crumble, and the last person he thought would challenge him, Janelle, began to realize everything for what it really was. Janelle was never boisterous, never dramatic. Her insurrection was not verbal. It was silent, in the fact that she no longer asked for permission. While Kody mourned publicly, acting the distraught patriarch, Janelle was moving in the background. She had always been the practical one, the bookkeeper who kept the accounts in balance while everybody else indulged in emotion and anarchy. And it was that practicality that made her a threat to Kody's fantasy. Because when Janelle began to go over the numbers, the accounts, the property lines, the investments, she noticed something that made her stomach curl. It didn't add up. Money from Family Traditions LLC, the supposedly communal account for all the wives and children, wasn't where it would have been. Transfers, withdrawals, business expenses that didn't align with any project they had been discussing. Kody had always told her that everything was for the family, but when Janelle traced the paper trail, she discovered that the family did not count her, or Christine. It counted only Kody and Robin. It was like a tidal wave hitting her. All those years of trust me, all of those late-night conversations in which he told her that they were planning one future together, it was smoke and mirrors. While Janelle was saving up for college and living in an RV, Robin was purchasing thousands of dollars in furniture. Kody had been investing in a second LLC, one he and Robin alone were listed on. It wasn't betrayal. It was erasure. When she confronted him, it wasn't with tantrums and tears. She sat across from him at the kitchen table, a pile of papers clutched in her hands. He was already bristling before she'd even spoken. "What's this about?" he snapped, folding his arms. She was calm but incisive. "It's about the truth, Kody. It's about the money you claimed was for the family." He shifted, already in a bad mood. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Everything's out in the open. You just don't get the process." That phrase, "you don't get it," was the one he used to shut her up every time. But this time it didn't work. Janelle leaned forward, staring at him. "I know enough to know you've been lying." He laughed, a bitter, short sound that filled the space between them. "This is absurd. You're letting Christine's paranoia consume you." The second he said her name, Janelle's demeanor shifted. "You still don't get it, do you? Christine didn't poison me. You did that to yourself." For an instant, Kody's mask fell. His expression grew cold, his voice icy. "You're being hysterical. You always do this when you're upset." Janelle rose slowly to her feet. "Perhaps I am hysterical, Kody. Perhaps it's because I've finally understood that I've been paying for your deceptions." That was it. The argument ceased not with a yell, but with a silent departure, her feet echoing down the hallway as he sat there, teeth clenched, glowering at the document she left on the table. When the cameras turned on again weeks later, Janelle was missing too. Not technically, not in headlines yet, but in spirit. She wasn't playing her part anymore. She wasn't sitting next to Robin pretending to be equals. She was finished. In her confessional interview, she said it quietly. "I think Kody forgot what leadership means. It's not about control. It's about trust. And I can't follow someone I don't trust." The language was measured, but the effect was seismic. Fans blew up online. Viewers who had previously perceived Kody as self-assured now perceived him as desperate. Each interview, each new episode revealed more of his disintegration. His voice rang out louder, his hands trembled more, his eyes flicked rather than met the camera. He claimed to be attacked, that his wives were being manipulated, that they never appreciated how much he worked. But nobody was believing it anymore. Christine was flourishing. Janelle was radiating freedom. And Robin, the sole surviving wife, was beginning to see that even she couldn't keep this up anymore. Because Kody's rage wasn't just on the outside anymore. It was turning inward. He was actually beginning to believe his own narratives. The family that used to give him identity was lost. The wives that gave him identity were lost. And all that was left was a man with the remnants of his own decisions all around him. But what no one expected, not even Christine or Janelle, was what followed. A leak, a string of emails and payments that would validate all their worst fears. Evidence that Kody's reality wasn't merely shattering emotionally, it was falling apart legally as well. The reality was set to become public, and there was no way to stop it. When the leak struck, it was like a storm without warning. It began with rumors in fan forums, screenshots on Reddit posts, and gossip spreading on social media quicker than anyone could contain it. Then came the news headline that made it official. Kody Brown's secret accounts exposed, family funds in question. The piece was thorough. Too thorough. Someone had mailed an anonymous folder full of years' worth of financial documents, transactions, business filings, and bank statements for a company none of the other wives knew anything about, KN&R Holdings, LLC. The initials were unmistakable, Kody and Robin. It wasn't long before the dots were connected. Payments designated as household expenses, production fees, and maintenance. But they weren't directed toward the family's joint houses or kids. They were being directed toward one house, one wife, one way of life. Robin's. Christine learned about it the same way the world learned, via her phone. She was having coffee with Janelle when the alert arrived. For a second, she didn't respond. She simply gazed at the screen. Then she flipped it around. Janelle's eyes went wide and a sick smile spread. "He did it to himself," she murmured. The network attempted damage control. TLC released a cryptic statement on respecting the privacy of the Brown family. But it was too late. The fans didn't care about privacy, they cared about answers. And for the first time, the story wasn't being told in Kody's own words. It was being told in receipts. Kody seethed behind the scenes. He called it a witch hunt, said the files were fabricated, and put the blame on Christine and Janelle for spreading lies to the press. But the tone of his interviews was different. The swagger was gone. His answers were brief, defensive, punctuated with anger. He was no longer speaking to his family. He was speaking at them. Christine did not comment publicly. Not initially, but onlookers picked up on a change in her demeanor during her next outing. She wasn't bitter or vindictive, she was tranquil. Too tranquil, even. Responding to the reports, she said, "Truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try to bury it. I don't need to fight for justice. It's already happening?" Janelle was not so tactful. She confirmed the accounting discrepancies in a subdued interview that spread like wildfire in hours. "I don't think the family ever really had transparency," she said. "Some of us worked. Some of us sacrificed. And some of us took." That lone phrase, "and some of us took," was repeated on every entertainment network for weeks. Meanwhile, Kody's fury turned inward. The video of him during those periods was difficult to watch. He stormed back and forth in confessionals, his hair tousled, his voice shaking between anger and incredulity. "They're trying to kill me," he blurted out at one point, pounding the table with his fist. "They're rewriting history. They're—" He cut himself off, his jaw clenched, eyes glazed over. For the briefest flash of time, it seemed like he caught on. It wasn't them. It was him. That flash flickered away as soon as it came. He dug his heels in deeper, labeling Christine and Janelle traitors. He explained to Robin that he had to fight back. And Robin, exhausted, frightened but still faithful, reminded him gently, "Perhaps fighting isn't what we require at this time." He did not hear her. He never did. In a matter of weeks, Kody made a legal complaint calling for an investigation into the leak, alleging breach of privacy and defamation. But the lawyers for Christine and Janelle replied with something more powerful. documentation of money that had been misspent long before the show's collapse. The case was no longer about reputation. It was about holding people accountable. Christine and Janelle came into court side by side. They didn't enter as co-plaintiffs or as ex-wives. They entered as women who had finally ceased being intimidated by Kody's version of truth. And when they sat down, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. Even the judge picked up on the tension. A man whose arrogance had become panic, sitting across from two women whose silence had become strength. Christine glanced at Kody once in the room. He would not look at her. He sat straight ahead, his hands clasped together as if clinging to the last shreds of his tail. As testimony commenced, Kody's world, his painstakingly constructed world, began to come apart strand by strand. Emails exposed broken promises. Files unveiled fund diversion. Text messages graphically depicted manipulation in the guise of leadership. The man who had once sermonized about spiritual balance and family unity now stood diminutive, trapped in his own reality. Each attorney's question eroded the lie he'd constructed for more than a decade. Robin sat in back of him, her eyes glassy, her face unreadable. There were times when she appeared to be on the verge of tears, not just for him, but for herself. She was coming to understand that the empire she'd fought to protect for years had been constructed on sand. By day's end, the courtroom wasn't merely silent, it was somber. Kody never once looked up. His gaze remained fixed on the table, his hands shaking ever so slightly as he muttered something to his attorney. Outside, Christine and Janelle had nothing to say to the media. They didn't have to. The truth had already spoken. That evening, as the news flashed, the Browns face financial reckoning. Kody sat by himself in his car. The cameras filmed him there for a brief moment, eyes bloodshot, face ashen. He didn't scream. He didn't smash anything. He just sat there, mumbling to himself. They were supposed to be my family. But what he didn't know is this. His family hadn't abandoned him. He had driven them away one lie at a time, and now, for the first time, no one was left to blame. But the tale wasn't finished. Because what followed, what Christine said in her next interview, would be the coup de grace to the fantasy Kody struggled so hard to maintain. A truth not only about money, but love, and the one secret that Kody never expected she'd share. The world had already witnessed the disintegration of Kody Brown's financial empire. But what everyone didn't know was what Christine next revealed. Because her truth wasn't a bank account or a property line, it was something more, something that couldn't be recorded or refuted. It started quietly. Christine consented to a sit-down interview. No glamorous setup, no promotional tie-ins, just her, a lone chair, and a camera crew. She was dressed in plain clothes, her hair pulled back, her hands clasped in her lap. There was no venom in her eyes, only weariness, the kind that you feel when you've been pretending everything's okay for all these years. When the interviewer asked her why she was finally talking, she smiled weakly. "Because I don't want to carry his story anymore," she said quietly. "For years I existed within a construct of his reality. Now it's time to narrate mine." She breathed in deeply, the type that represses tears. "I was always taught love was a sacrifice. That to love Kody was to sacrifice pieces of myself, little by little, until there was nothing. And I did that for more than 25 years. But I came to see one day that he wasn't sacrificing anything for me." The interviewer questioned whether or not she ever believed that Kody loved her. Christine gazed downward, her lips quivering for an instant before she spoke. "He adored the concept of me. The one who smiled, the one who forgave, the one who followed his game plan. But he never loved me, not the woman I had become once I began asking questions." It was quiet in the room. Even the cameraman, who had been following the Browns for years, lowered his lens a bit. It was one of those moments that didn't require cutting. She went on, her voice more assertive now. "When I told him I wanted to leave, he said I was abandoning the family. But what he didn't understand was he had abandoned me long before that. Every time I cried and he told me to get over it, Every time I asked to be seen and he said I was being dramatic. That was abandonment too. She paused, her eyes glistening. I think the hardest part wasn't losing him. It was realizing that I'd already lost myself trying to keep him. The interviewer asked what made her finally walk away. Christine smiled, but it was sad, the kind of smile that carries years of memory. It wasn't a fight or a betrayal. It was just silence. I realized one night that I couldn't remember the last time we laughed together. The last time he asked how I was. The house felt empty, even when he was in it. That's when I knew. You can't build a family on silence. Those 6 words, "You can't build a family on silence," became the internet-breaking quote. It was replayed, shared, written into headlines all over every platform. And somewhere in Arizona, Kody Brown sat alone to watch that interview, his jaw clenched, his eyes raging with fury he could no longer conceal. He issued a statement a few days later, labeling her statements emotionally exaggerated and hurtful. But the tone no longer mattered. The world had made up its mind. Christine wasn't bitter, she was credible. And Kody's denial rang like a man screaming in the wind, attempting to cling to something already lost. Meanwhile, Janelle spoke out publicly for Christine's interview. She reposted a clip with one sentence of her on "She's telling the truth." It was the moment the viewers had waited. For cohesion between the two ladies who had silently weathered the same tempest together for years. Their tranquil honesty cut deeper than any melodramatic tirade could. They weren't seeking to destroy Kody. They were attempting to heal. Off camera, things were deteriorating for him. The renewal of the show was in doubt. Production sources rumor-mongered that the network was weighing a drastic change, away from Kody and onto the women who abandoned him. The patriarch had lost his spot in the narrative. The narrative was no longer his to spin. Robin, remaining by his side, was openly unraveling. Her formerly soft interviews became combative, her crying consistent. Viewers, once sympathetic, now wondered about her motivations. Was it love? Or duty to a man who could not face the truth? One evening, Kody summoned a private conference with the rest of the production crew. He wanted to shoot a rebuttal, his truth. He wanted to clear his name, to uncover the women he felt had betrayed him. But the network would not permit it. They informed him kindly, "Kody, the audience are no longer with you." He stormed out of the meeting. That was the evening that neighbors said they saw him sitting by himself for hours outside. No cameras, no crew, no wives. Just a man in the quiet he had once wielded as a weapon. And sitting there, looking out into the darkness, he finally did it. Not to anyone, but to himself. "I did this." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. It was reality. The first truthful moment Kody Brown had perhaps ever experienced in decades. But what Christine didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that someone else had been taping that evening. Not the program. Not the media. Someone intimate. The tape would leak weeks later. And in it, Kody's voice was heard, raw, shattered, confessing something no one ever imagined he'd ever say aloud. The truth that would turn everything around. It started as a whisper in the night. A midnight upload. No music, no credits. Just a shaky phone recording with the caption, "Kody Brown, the confession." No one believed it at first. Everyone thought it was staged. Another fan compilation cut together to catch the drama ride. But when the video began to play, no one could mistake the voice. That rasp, that tone, that pain. It was Kody. The sound was distant at first, rain pattering against something metal, the distant hum of an engine of a truck. Then there was a man breathing hard, muttering to himself, his voice cracking over the static. "I don't know when it all went wrong," he said. "I just wanted them to listen. I wanted them to see what I was trying to create. But somewhere in the process, I quit seeing them." He stopped speaking. You could hear the tension, the shaking in his chest that results from years of keeping everything inside. "They weren't the issue," he went on quietly. "It was me, always me. I just didn't want to say it." There was a long silence, and then the crash of something slamming, possibly a hand on the dashboard, possibly frustration finally breaking free after years of quiet. I told them it was about faith, about family, but it was about control, about being right, about being seen, and now there's nothing left to see. Those words rang out, jagged, raw, splintered. This wasn't the Kody that fans knew. This wasn't the man who screamed about betrayal on television or blamed everyone else for leaving. This was a naked man at his center, afraid, vulnerable, and tiny. And then came the moment that froze the world. He whispered, barely audible, "Christine, I should have loved you better." The sound broke into silence for a few seconds, and then cut off with the slamming of a door and the beat of the rain. The video went viral. In hours, it reached millions of views. In a day, all outlets had featured it. And in a week, Kody's name was heard everywhere, no longer as a leader, but as a man who had finally cracked. Christine heard about it first, sitting at home, scrolling through her phone. For a very long time, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she put the phone aside and whispered, "Too late." Janelle called her that evening. They did not discuss the video. They did not discuss forgiveness. They simply sat on the phone in silence. Two women who had borne the burden of his life for too long, now relieved of it. The production team contacted Kody for comment, and he declined. Robin was spotted leaving their house days later, distraught, her face white, her eyes red. No one had any idea if she was departing for good or simply walking away from the din. The network put the filming on hold indefinitely. There were rumors of a spin-off centered on the women, their new lives, their liberation, their reconstruction. But as for Kody, no one had any idea where he went. Some reported that he departed Flagstaff. Some reported that he remained there, just altered. Weeks afterward, a camera crew went back to the old land of the family at Coyote Pass to shoot the last shot for what would ultimately be the series' ending point. The land lay vacant, the sky streaked in golden dusk. The breeze bore the sound of birds and the faint rustle of grass. The narration, Christine's, read over the still scene. Sometimes endings don't come with closure. They come with truth. And sometimes truth doesn't heal, it just frees you. The camera swept over the vacant lots, the dream that never materialized. And for an instant, the lens caught a glimpse of something far away. A person standing beside the old fence line. Head bent, still, alone. The shot held, just long enough for the viewer to recognize who it was. Kody. The screen went black. And before the credits themselves rolled, a final line flashed on screen. To be continued. Because even when his world fell apart, even when everyone else turned their backs, there remained one truth unrevealed. One person unseen, and the story wasn't done.